Get her out of my sight. Kang Do-hyun's voice cut through the penthouse like a blade dipped in ice. His jaw was tight. His eyes, darker than the Seoul midnight sky, didn't blink once as two of his men escorted the sobbing woman toward the elevator. She was draped in designer silk from head to toe. Her lips were injected. Her tears were manufactured. And the hidden recording device his security team had found stitched into the lining of her Chanel clutch told him everything he needed to know. Another one. Another perfectly polished, elegantly dressed snake trying to slither her way into his world. Whether it was for his money, his power, or the information they could sell to his enemies, they always came wrapped in the same disgusting packaging. Fake smiles. Fake curves. Fake everything. He loosened his tie and walked toward the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked Gangnam. The city sparkled beneath him like a jewel box, but Do-hyun felt nothing. He hadn't felt anything in a long time. That's the third one this month, boss, said June, his right-hand man, stepping forward carefully. June had been with him since they were teenagers running errands for the old syndicate bosses. Now they ran the entire Kang empire together, but June still knew when to tread lightly. Do-hyun didn't turn around. Then your vetting process is garbage. She passed every background check. Her family is old money. Her father is broke and owes the Yoon syndicate 40 million won. Do-hyun finally turned, and the look in his eyes made June take a half step back. I found that out in 10 minutes. You had 10 days. June lowered his head. It won't happen again. It won't, Do-hyun said quietly, and somehow that was more terrifying than if he had shouted. Because I'm done. No more arrangements. No more introductions. No more of these elegant parasites pretending they want me when all they want is what I have. He sat down on the leather sofa and poured himself a glass of whiskey. The amber liquid caught the light as he swirled it slowly. Every single one of them is the same, June. They walk in here smelling like roses, dressed like royalty, speaking in that soft rehearsed voice. And underneath all of it, they're rotting. I'm done entertaining it. June hesitated, then nodded. Understood. Now if you're already hooked and you want to see how this cold-hearted Mafia CEO's entire world gets turned upside down by the one woman he never expected, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now, drop a like, and settle in because this story is about to take you on a ride you will not forget. 3 weeks later, Do-hyun was seated in the private dining room of his restaurant in Itaewon, reviewing territory reports on his tablet, when his phone buzzed. It was a notification from the front desk of his building. A delivery. He ignored it. His staff handled deliveries. But then June called. Boss, there's a situation at the lobby. Do-hyun's eyes narrowed. What kind of situation? The delivery driver. She won't leave the package with security. Says she needs a direct signature from the recipient because it's a restricted pharmaceutical shipment. And she's not backing down. Do-hyun almost laughed. Almost. Then forge my signature and send her away. I tried. She said if we forge anything on a restricted medical shipment, she is legally required to report it, and she will. She pulled out the regulation handbook, boss. She's reading it to the security team right now. For the first time in weeks, something that wasn't irritation or boredom flickered across Do-hyun's face. It was curiosity. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He arrived at his corporate building in 12. The lobby of Kang Enterprises was all black marble, glass, and silence. His security team, for men who could each bench press a small car, stood in a loose semicircle around a woman who couldn't have been taller than 5'6". She was wearing a navy blue delivery uniform that was slightly too big for her. Her dark brown skin was glowing under the lobby's cold lighting, untouched by makeup. Her natural hair was pulled back into a practical puff. She had a clipboard in one hand and a regulation manual in the other, and she was reading from it with the calm authority of a courtroom lawyer. Section 14, subsection B clearly states that restricted pharmaceutical deliveries require a verified signature from the named recipient or a legally designated proxy with notarized documentation. You have provided neither. She looked up at the nearest security guard. So no, I'm not leaving this package with you. I don't care if your boss owns this building, the one next to it, and the one across the street. The law is the law. The security guards looked at each other helplessly. And Do-hyun stopped walking. He just stood there, 10 feet away, watching her. This woman in her oversized uniform with her scuffed work boots and her absolute refusal to be intimidated by men twice her size in a building that made most people whisper. She wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was just doing her job, and she was doing it with a kind of stubborn integrity that hit him somewhere unexpected. I'm Kang Do-hyun, he said. She looked up. Their eyes met. He expected her to falter. Everyone did when they first saw him. He knew what he looked like. He knew the effect he had. He'd been weaponizing it since he was 22. But this woman just blinked, looked down at her clipboard, looked back at him, and said, ID, please. June, standing behind Do-hyun, made a sound like he'd been punched. Do-hyun stared at her. You're joking. Do I look like I'm joking? She held the clipboard against her chest. I don't know you. I've never seen you before. You could be anyone. I need government-issued identification to release this package. That's the protocol. Something shifted in Do-hyun's chest. Something dangerous and unfamiliar. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his ID. He handed it to her. She examined it carefully, compared it to the name on the shipment form, nodded once, and held out the electronic signature pad. Sign here, please. He signed. She tore off the receipt, handed him his copy, placed the package on the front desk, and said, Have a good evening, Mr. Kang. And then she turned around and walked out. No lingering glance. No flirtatious smile. No attempt to make conversation or slip him her number. She just left. Like he was any other name on any other delivery route. Do-hyun stood in his own lobby, holding a delivery receipt, feeling like the ground beneath his feet had just shifted 2 inches to the left. June. Yes, boss. Find out her name. June blinked. The delivery woman? Do-hyun didn't answer. He just walked toward the elevator, but he folded the receipt carefully and put it in his breast pocket. Her name was Nyla Carter. She was 26 years old. She'd moved to Seoul from Chicago 3 years ago after her mother passed away. She worked 2 jobs. During the day, she was a delivery driver for a logistics company. At night, she worked part-time at a small bakery in Mapogu, where she was slowly saving up money to open her own pastry shop. She lived alone in a tiny one-room apartment in a building that Do-hyun wouldn't house his lowest-ranking men in. She had no criminal record, no debt, no connections to any syndicate, and no social media presence to speak of. She was, in every possible way, the opposite of every woman who had ever tried to enter his life. And he couldn't stop thinking about her. Over the next 2 weeks, Do-hyun did something he had never done before. He created reasons for deliveries. Pharmaceutical supplies. Equipment. Documents that absolutely did not need to be hand-delivered but suddenly required restricted shipment protocols. And every single time, he specifically requested the same driver. Nyla noticed. By the 4th delivery, she looked up at him with those sharp brown eyes and said, You know, for a man who runs a corporation this size, you seem to have a very inefficient supply chain. Nobody orders this many restricted shipments in 2 weeks. He leaned against the lobby desk. Maybe I'm a very cautious businessman. Or maybe you're wasting my time and your money. She held out the signature pad. Sign. He signed, but this time, he didn't step back. Have dinner with me. She laughed. Not a polite, flattered laugh. A real laugh, like he'd told her the funniest joke she'd heard all year. No. Why not? Because I have a second job to get to, Mr. Kang. Some of us work for a living. She took the pad back. Have a good evening. She walked out again, and Do-hyun watched her go with something burning in his chest that he couldn't name and didn't want to. She said no, June observed from behind him, clearly trying not to smile. She said no today, Do-hyun replied. Tomorrow is a different day. But tomorrow, Nyla wasn't on the route. A different driver showed up, a nervous young man who nearly dropped the package when he realized who he was delivering to. Do-hyun signed without a word and felt an irritation so sharp it startled him. He called the logistics company. He was told that Nyla had been moved to a different district. By whose request, he demanded. Her supervisor's. There was a scheduling change. Do-hyun hung up and looked at June. By the logistics company. June stared at him. You want to buy an entire logistics company because they moved one delivery driver off your route? Did I stutter? 3 days later, Kong Enterprises acquired a 51% stake in Seoul Express Logistics. Do-hyun didn't change the management. He didn't interfere with operations. He simply made one request through 3 layers of corporate intermediaries so it wouldn't be traced back to him. He wanted driver number 247 reassigned to the Gangnam Corporate District. Nyla showed up the following Monday. She walked into the lobby with her clipboard, looked at the package, looked at the address, and then looked up at Do-hyun, who was standing by the elevator as if he just happened to be passing through. You did something, she said. I don't know what you're talking about. I was reassigned to Mapo. Now I'm back here. I've been doing this job long enough to know that route changes don't reverse themselves for no reason. She narrowed her eyes at him. What did you do? I signed for a delivery. That's all I've ever done. He met her eyes. Are you going to give me my package? She held his gaze for a long time. There was something new in her expression. Not anger. Not fear. Something that looked a lot like the thing he was feeling himself but would never admit. She handed him the package. You're a strange man, Mr. Kong. Do-hyun. Mr. Kong, she repeated firmly, but the corner of her mouth twitched. It was the tiniest almost smile, barely visible, gone in a second. And it ruined him. He started showing up at the bakery. The first time, he walked in at 9 p.m. wearing a 10 million won suit in a shop that sold pastries for 3,000 won each. The owner, a sweet elderly Korean woman named Mrs. Cho, nearly had a heart attack when she recognized him. But Nyla, who was behind the counter boxing up red bean buns, just looked at him with that same unbothered expression and said, We're closing in 30 minutes. Then I'd better order quickly. He looked at the display case. What do you recommend? That you find a bakery closer to your side of the city. Mrs. Cho gasped and swatted Nyla's arm. Nyla. That is Kang Do-hyun. You cannot speak to him that way. Nyla looked at Mrs. Cho with genuine confusion. Why not? He's a customer. I'm recommending he find a more convenient location. That's good customer service. Do-hyun bit the inside of his cheek to keep from smiling. I'll take one of everything. He came back the next night. And the next. And the one after that. He always ordered too much, always left enormous tips that Nyla tried to refuse, and always stayed until closing, sitting at the small corner table, watching her work. She moved efficiently, without wasted motion. She was precise when she measured ingredients, gentle when she handled dough, focused when she decorated. She talked to Mrs. Cho in Korean that was imperfect but earnest, and she laughed at the old woman's jokes with her whole body. She wiped down tables without being asked. She restocked shelves without complaint. She never sat down during her entire shift. She was the most real person he had ever met, and it terrified him. On the 5th night, he waited until Mrs. Cho went to the back, and then he said, Why won't you let me take you to dinner? Nyla stopped wiping the counter. She didn't look up. Because I know who you are. The air in the room changed. I didn't at first, she continued, her voice quiet. But after you started showing up, I looked you up. Kang Do-hyun. CEO of Kong Enterprises. Youngest head of the Kong Syndicate in its history. You control half the